Today I'll be showing you how to use the chain rule, which is a rule that's used to find the derivative of a function inside of another function. So on screen here I have some examples of functions that you could differentiate using the chain rule. So for example, this first one, 5 minus x all to the power of 100. As you can see, there's an inner function, which is 5 minus x. And then there's also the outer function, which is raising it to the power of 100. And this next one is also a function within a function. So as you can see, the inner function is x squared plus 5x minus 7. But then there's also an outer function, which is the sine function. Down here, we have the inner function of x squared minus 7x, with the outer function of a square root. And this last one is actually a function inside of a function inside of a function. So there's actually three functions. The innermost function is the 5x squared plus 1. Then there's the sine function, and because it's sine cubed, there's also the cubed, which is the outer function, which puts everything to the power of 3. So to differentiate all of these, we can use the chain rule, which says that if a function is f of g of x, so a function of a function, the derivative will be the derivative of the outer function f, with g of x still the same, times the derivative of g of x. So let me show you by doing these examples. Alright, so first, why don't we try differentiating 5 minus x to the power of 100 with respect to x using the chain rule. So the first thing you do is you differentiate the outer function, but keep the inner function the same. So we can just use the power rule to do that. So we can take the 100 out the front, and then subtract 1 from the power of 5 minus x, so it becomes 99. And then we multiply by the derivative of 5 minus x, which is just negative 1. And so that means that it equals negative 100 times 5 minus x to the power of 99. So as you can see, first we differentiated the outer function, in this case using the power rule, but we kept the inner function the same, and then we multiplied the whole thing by the derivative of the inner function. Alright, how about differentiating sine of x squared plus 5x minus 7 with respect to x? So once again, using the chain rule, first we differentiate the outer function. So the derivative of sine is cosine, and then we just keep the inner function as it is. So x squared plus 5x minus 7. And then we're going to multiply that by the derivative of the inner function. So the derivative of x squared plus 5x minus 7 is going to be 2x plus 5, just using the normal power rule. So that's the final answer. Alright, let's see if we can find the derivative of this one with respect to x. Well, the square root of x squared minus 7x can be rewritten as x squared minus 7x all to the power of a half, because raising something to the power of a half is the same as square rooting it. And now we can use the chain rule like before. So differentiate the outer function using the power rule by bringing the half out the front and subtracting 1 from the power. And then we can multiply by the derivative of the inner function. So differentiating x squared minus 7x gives 2x minus 7. Now I'm going to get rid of the negative power by rewriting this whole expression as a fraction and bringing the x squared minus 7x to the power of negative a half to the bottom. So you can get rid of a negative power just by bringing it to the bottom of a fraction like this. Now we can rewrite it as a positive exponent. So that equals 2x minus 7 over 2 root x squared minus 7x. So that's the answer. Alright, And finally, how about the derivative of sine cubed of 5x squared plus 1? Well, we can rewrite sine cubed of 5x squared plus 1 as sine of 5x squared plus 1 all to the power of 3, like that. So here we have a function inside of a function inside of another function. So it's going to be a double chain rule. So let's start. First we can get the derivative of the outermost function. So bring the 3 out the front. And then write the inner two functions as they are. So sine 5x squared plus 1. And then subtract 1 from the power of 3 to make it a 2. And now we need to multiply by the derivative of the inner function. And because the inner function is a function of a function, we're going to need to use the chain rule again. So we're going to multiply by cosine of 5x squared plus 1, because we just differentiated the outer function, and the derivative of sine is cosine. And then multiply that by the derivative of 5x squared plus 1, which is 10x. And now we can just try to simplify. So let's bring that 10x out the front and make it 3 times 10x times cosine of 5x squared plus 1 times sine of 5x squared plus 1 all squared. And then let's multiply these. And let's turn the sine of 5x squared plus 1 squared into the simpler notation. So let's make that 30x times cosine of 5x squared plus 1 times sine squared of 5x squared plus 1. And that's the final answer right there. And that's how you use the chain rule. So thanks for watching.